Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, DwyerVIP.com, on Roku, Dwyer Sports Betting, and Dwyer Boxing. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. The Tony Bellew, Isaac Chilemba fight just finished. I had Isaac Chilemba before the fight, so understand the bias, right? Chilemba was a greater than 2-1 underdog going into the fight, fighting Tony Bellew in Bellew's backyard, Liverpool. And I have to be blunt. I agree with the judge who had it 116-112 for Chilemba. I feel a little bit ripped off. In fact, I feel a lot ripped off that this fight was ruled a draw. I think the press coverage is going to be a bit biased. You know, Mr. Magoo, Buddy McGirt, is a solid cornerman. But understand, before McGirt starts yelling at his fighter to look more inspired, Chilemba was already winning the fight, right? Let's just view it objectively. Now, granted, as objective as a guy who had money on Chilemba can be. But I thought Chilemba was hitting Tony Bellew quite methodically with an excellent jab. I thought Bellew had a problem getting inside on Chilemba. I thought Chilemba was faster than Bellew. I thought he had a more mobile center of gravity. I thought he moved better than Bellew. When Bellew would come in and throw hooks, I thought Chilemba had them blocked. Chilemba would have his hands like this. He would block the shots. He would come back and immediately counter. Now, let me just say this. You know, we don't fault fighters like Carl Froch for pacing themselves as a fight goes along. Obviously, this is a 12-round fight. If you're Isaac Chilemba, you want to make sure that you have gas left in the tank. You can't lay it all out in the first 6 rounds and then wonder what you're going to do in the last 6, right? So I thought Chilemba was pacing himself beautifully. Quite frankly, I thought he got to Tony Bellew. I thought it was interesting. I gave Bellew the first round, but you saw how tightly wound Bellew was at the end of the first round when he put his head up to Chilemba's head and seemed to be upset, trying to play some macho game with Chilemba, who seemed to be laughing at him, right? The reason why Tony Bellew looked lethargic wasn't because Tony Bellew was lethargic. It was because of Isaac Chilemba's jab, right? There's something keeping Tony Bellew outside. It's a jab and lateral movement mixed in with hand speed, right? These guys could fight 10 times. Tony Bellew is never going to have the hand speed that Chilemba has. Let me point out, too, early in this fight, you could tell that Chilemba had cracked Bellew's code because he drops his hands. He stands in front of the bomber and he has his hands at his side, right? He knew what was coming back. Had Tony Bellew started coming in with right leads, Chilemba was prepared to raise a hand to block it, right? Also, Chilemba seemed to be a master at distance. Now, understand, what I'm going to say is controversial, but Buddy McGirt has had a problem with jabbers in the past. He used to be the trainer for Paulie Malignaggi, right? The two guys had a difference of opinion and parted ways, right? Malignaggi in interviews blatantly says that he feels that the corner was holding him back. Isaac Chilemba, I thought, whether he came forward or went backward, was controlling the fight. I personally feel, even though what Buddy McGirt told him was on the money in terms of him coming forward and Tony Bellew being unable to get past his jab, right? You actually hear McGirt yelling at Chilemba in the corner. McGirt and other people yelling at Chilemba in the corner saying, you know, aggressively use your jab. You could use your jab literally to bludgeon him, right? Come forward, stick the jab out to literally back him up. Bellew couldn't get by the jab. That's true. But understand that Bellew also couldn't figure out the lateral movement when Chilemba took a step back. We saw that in the earlier rounds, right? I know the guys on Sky were doing their best, and I have the utmost respect for Johnny Nelson especially, right? The former champion for several years, right? And you got Glenn McCory, but I thought those guys were overdoing it a little bit. I thought it was a chess match early on. I didn't think either fighter looked uninspired. I thought they were both trying to figure it out and understand the lay of the land was important because one guy had the hand speed, the other guy had the punching power, right? So they both had to be careful. They both had to be tentative. Folks, it's a 12-round fight. It's not a 5-round fight. So I thought both guys were trying to figure out the lay of the land. I thought that in the first round, we saw that Tony Bellew seemed to be physically stronger. But we also saw that he was stiff compared to Chilemba, and that Chilemba was able to put together combinations and land punches. Right? We also saw that Chilemba could literally, take a step back and still control the action. So I believe it's a mistake for a corner to tell a guy with a great jab that he should always be on his front foot, right? Because that removes the element of surprise. I also get that Chilemba is fighting on the other guy's home turf, and that, his corner clearly wants him to be active enough to win the close rounds, right? You don't want to look too cerebral, right? And then lose the fight, even though your feints were working and you were subtly doing what you wanted to do. I get that part of it. But I believe Chilemba's a special fighter. As I've said, I actually agree with the judge who had it 116-112. I thought it was a wide win by Chilemba. I thought he was just dictating the angles in the fight. Apart from a few Bellew moments, like the first round, I thought he kept Bellew guessing. I thought Bellew understood that he didn't have enough time to get leverage on punches, right? Chilemba is never badly hurt. I thought that, quite frankly, Chilemba, whether he's on his front foot or his back foot, was winning the fight. Quite frankly, and we'll call this a sour grape video, I feel ripped off not getting my portion of the greater than 2-to-1 odds on this fight. I think that the gamblers who were on the Chilemba side of the table, quite frankly, got a bit hometown on the draw, right? So food for thought. We'll see what happens if these two fight again. Rest assured that, in my opinion, there's nothing Tony Bellew can do to match Chilemba's boxing acumen, right? Chilemba just has a more mobile center of gravity. I know the telecast was saying that Tony Bellew's cerebral and comes in with 3 different, game plans and stuff like that. That's all fine and dandy. But, again, talent is part of the equation. And if one guy just can move better than you and can put his punches together better than you, and if I asked you who the better defensive fighter is, if you're being honest, in my opinion, you would have to say it's Isaac Chilemba, right? You're not going to be able to offset all of those advantages in one training camp. As I said before this video, before the fight, I think Tony Bellew's best chance of beating Isaac Chilemba is by KO. I'll concede, as I have to, given these scores. And let me just say, I'd like to hear from YouTube Nation, because to me these scorecards are curious, right? One judge 116-112 Chilemba, another judge 116-115. Really? Right? When you see a scorecard like that, understand that means that judge was scoring rounds 10-10. Right? Then the other judge has it 114-114. The second half of the fight, how many rounds did you give Tony Bellew? And let me just say, can you say that in the first half of the fight, you gave Tony Bellew more than half the rounds? Let me hear from you, YouTube Nation. I thought the scoring was off. I thought Chilemba won this one. I'd take him in the rematch. Quite frankly, I'm upset that I wasn't able to get my share of the winnings on the underdog. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online, and I hope you visit us, of course, at the website, gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for watching.